Hello and welcome to Jenkins Documentation Office Hours. Today is November 14th, and this is the EU-US session. Around the table, we have myself, Kevin Martins, Chris Stern, Bruno Verashton, and Mark Waite. So for the agenda today, notes about the contributor spotlight and what's the next month looks for it. Hacktoberfest recap blog post, some other blog posts that have been published since our last session, Jenkins elections discussion and some updates there. We'll quickly just touch on the last LTS release, 2.479.1, and we look forward to 0.2 coming in a couple weeks. Just a quick update on weeklies. There was a Jenkins security advisory published this week. We have the discussion that was started previously by Antoine Levin about plugin documentation. And then I wanted to highlight some of the pull requests that have come in since our last session that have updated the documentation. Any other topics that anyone wants to make sure we cover on the agenda today, or does that take care of what everyone had on their minds? Okay, cool. So starting out, so again, the contributor spotlight. Right now we are featuring Jesse Glick, which is great. Jesse's been a long-time contributor to Jenkins, and it's really great that we are able to highlight him and share his story here. The picture he shares is actually taken by Kosuke, so that's a fun little tidbit of information. And I think that actually will be the case for James Nord as well. So it's interesting. They both praised Kosuke's photography techniques and how he makes everyone feel comfortable. So really nice, good stuff. And then next up, we'll have Vincent Latome. Vincent will be the second contributor spotlight for November. And then, as I had mentioned, we'll have one December spotlight, and that will be for James Nord. We're going to align with the rest of the project where we take a 2-week break at the end of the year. We also want to make sure that we have max visibility for the spotlight. So in order to avoid any kind of dip or lack of visibility, we're just going to hold off and return back in 2025 fresh and ready. And we've been discussing in the advocacy and outreach group meetings, essential topics, Jenkins historical contributors, people that have had an impact on the project throughout the years, maybe not so much recently, but their importance and their contributions are huge. And so we want to make sure we also highlight stuff like that. So Alyssa is going to be reaching out to folks over the next couple months, and we'll figure out what happens in 2025. And then Hacktoberfest has ended. It's officially November now. So Bruno wrote up a nice recap of Hacktoberfest, shares some of the stats, and we want to thank all the contributors and participants of Hacktoberfest. Quick stats, we had over 1,100 pull requests across the org and 243 part of Hacktoberfest. And we managed to merge most of those, with 223 total being merged. So that's a lot of great work there. Thanks to all of the participants and contributors. Couldn't get to those numbers without any of their work. And then there's still an existing list of issues in Jenkins Jira that was gone through and refined by Darren, Basil, Mark, and Bruno, who had done that work prior to Hacktoberfest, but it's still there. So the work is ongoing and available if you'd like to explore. And on that note as well, Darren, Pope, and Mark did several video discussions and had several series throughout Hacktoberfest on different topics like maintaining plugins, improving plugins, and really extended a lot of the recently added plugin tutorial documentation. So that's available through the CloudBeast TV YouTube account. And I have a link here just to get you started with the maintaining plugins part 4. So there was clearly parts 1 through 3 as well. They're available there.
And so that's one where Darren and I think we do need a new section in the developer guide for maintaining a plugin. But that's just like it was with the last, that's a lot bigger effort than just create the videos. We've also got to describe the process, etc. So and there may be those who say, no, that's a bad choice. We've already got that kind of information. Let's find a better way to use the information we've got. It's still discussion. Just like the improve a plugin thing took some time to create, this one will also take some time to think through and create.
And I think that aligns really well, Mark, with the discussion that Antoine Neveu had brought last session about improving the plugin developer documentation, where when they have new folks being onboarded or joining the team, they want to have confidence in sending them over to the plugin development documentation. So that kind of work is going to be necessary sooner than later. And it's clearly a want from the community, even if it's just one person saying that. There are others that may not have spoken up about it. So definitely something that we are going to look at. And Antoine was on board with helping with that work as well. So finding out what that might look like, what kind of documentation we'll need to work on and include if it's already there. Lots of stuff to come, but that will be in time. So cool. Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate the additional insights. Next up, we have the blog posts recently posted. So we had another brownout for the Update Center migration. This was the last brownout. It went well for the infra team, as they have been. They've been able to resolve any issues that they've discovered. And everything's going so well that the Update Center migration is going to take place in the next week. So everything's looking really good there. And the infra team is really happy with the results so far. And the migration should go smoothly. And then another blog post that we had recently was the revamping Jenkins tutorials. So this was written up by Bruno and includes a video that was recorded at a recent summit that he gave a talk at. The video is basically him giving that talk, explaining what the challenges were with the tutorials previously, what we've done to update them and include the Docker Compose functionality to make life easier, to provide a safer environment to work with, and to just update the tutorials to more modern usage. So thanks very, very much to Bruno for writing that up, contributing the documentation along with Ashutosh, and for showing that the Google Summer of Code projects really do make a big difference in terms of the project, the site, the documentation, everything in general. Bruno, anything I missed on that one? Or
no, thank you, and you're welcome.
Yeah, great. And then the last blog post that we have to share is the Alpha Omega progress report. Thanks again to Bruno for writing this up. And this just goes over the progress that's already been made through the Alpha Omega grant and the work that's being done by Shlomo Dahan and Yaroslava Fenkin. And thanks again to Basil, Crow, and Bruno for their oversight and guidance on the project. This is great. This is a lot of work being done in a short amount of time already. It's been a very basically a furious sprint to start off the project with they have a list of plugins that needed to be updated for the CSP improvement. And they've gotten through some of the biggest numbers as far as installation goes. And we actually, in the governance board meeting, had Uli Hafner share that their work has actually helped him understand and recognize what work needs to be done in the future as well for maintenance of CSP and the plugins and the projects. So just amazing, fantastic work that we wouldn't have been able to embark on without Alpha Omega's grant. So thanks to them for their grant. And thanks again to Shlomo and Yaroslav for their continued work in helping improve the CSP in Jenkins. Any other notes or insights on the Alpha Omega stuff, Bruno, Mark, that you'd want to share?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. I hope I'm not calling out on that too much. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. So next up, so we've got Jenkins elections are underway. Voting is in progress. This is really important to note because voter registration has reopened. Thanks to Oleg for starting the discussion with the governance board and officers. We've reopened voter registration. So if you have not registered to vote, you still are able to. And voting will continue until November 30th, 2024 at whatever midnight is used. So plenty of time to get in there, register to vote, and vote. We have now 78 registered voters. And from the last statistics, we had over almost 50% of people who have registered to vote have already voted. So things are going very well there. We'd love to get more. but things are looking really well for the voting and the elections. So we'll have the results will be announced shortly after the end of November. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to the election committee. Either Mark or Basil will respond and let you know.
Yeah. Now it's time for the Mark Waite shaming thing. If you have not already voted, please get yourself registered through CIBS so that you can vote and then cast your vote.
And there is an email follow-up for anyone who does register to vote with instructions on how to do all of that. So if you haven't, please do so now. And we also have all the candidate statements available on the blog. So if you are curious to see what people think or what they hope to bring to the project, all that information is available there. And the voting is a ranked choice of voting. It's not just picking one person and saying that's the end of it. You organize them in terms of your preference. So we've got 3 board positions open. So that means you would put your top 3 for who you'd want to see in the board. Next up, so again, LTS 2.479.1 was released just a couple weeks ago on October 30th. It was a big release for Jenkins, as we now require Java 17 as the baseline for LTSs going forward. We've got the changelog and upgrade guide, as well as some updates that Basil Crow had added to the upgrade guide and changelog for a couple more plugins that need to be updated in lockstep with the LTS update. So thanks to Basil for all of the detailed information and additional instructions that we didn't catch in the first time. So everything's looking great there. And again, in addition to Java 17, the Spring Security 6 has also been implemented, which is a huge endeavor taken on by the team and the developers. So thanks to them for their work on that. And then on November 27th, we have LTS 2.479.2 scheduled to be released. Chris Stern's release lead on that. Thank you, Chris. And I've got the changelog and upgrade guide pull request submitted as well, open for review. But we've got the backporting already taken care of, and the release candidate came out yesterday, so things are looking good there. And yeah, provided there's no other issues, we'll be marching forward. On top of that, weekly 2.484 and 2.485 both released without any issues there. Things have been going smoothly, and we're going to be including some of the 2.485 release and changelog updates in the upcoming 0.2 release as well. So we've been able to backport them quickly enough that we can now include them in the upcoming release. And then we also had a Jenkins security advisory published just yesterday. This was a plugin advisory specifically. Jenkins core is not part of the issues in the advisory. So take a look at that. If you're curious or concerned about any plugins that you might have, they're outlined in the advisory. And the security team always does a lovely job of explaining what the issues are and what the status is. And then again, topic that Antoine Neveu brought last session is plugin development documentation. How can we improve it? There's parts of the documentation that has a note saying it's a work in progress, and what might need to be done to take that out of there, basically. The plugin development documentation, I haven't been able to update anything personally, but we've been getting a lot more pull requests lately from the developers, from different folks in the community to submit documentation updates for various pieces of it, whether it's a result of the work being done for the CSP or other updates coming as a result of the latest LTS release. But we do have work to do there, and some more clarification and some better guidance in the documentation could prove helpful. Antoine did also indicate that the work or the discussion wouldn't necessarily be something more involved until he had the capacity to, so we're still a couple weeks away from that part of it, but it's something that we should be considering now. Any comments, thoughts, concerns about any of that so far? Okay. So then the last item on the agenda is just recent work that's been added to Jenkins.io or submitted to the the repository. So first off, we had Aluda added as one of the adopters. So thanks to this contributor for working on that and submitting that. And I'm working with them to sort out an authentication error because they are willing to submit a success story. So
just one question, Kevin. I just didn't know. I was pretty cautious when I reviewed that PR because I don't know what are the rules when somebody submits that kind of thing. What does it mean to be an adopter? Anyone could come and give us a logo or link or something, or do we have to see the proof of something before accepting that?
I had the same concerns and I asked Mark. So Mark, what does that all mean?
So in the directory, there's a contributing.adoc file that gives the rules for what's required in order to be listed as an adopter, and they're actually quite simple.
Okay, so read the doc. I should have done so.
Yeah, actually, very good. Thank you. So I didn't realize that contributing guide was linked to the inside the page, but it is, Kevin. You just took us to it. Yeah. So and what it says. It's very simple, right? It says, fork and clone the repo, create the things, submit the pull request. So no other requirements listed, no proof required. Just, hey, we'd love to have you listed as an adopter on the list.
Okay, because you never know. Some people are spammers. That was not the case this time, and would like to guide people to something which is not that good on behalf of Jenkins, and I wouldn't want that to happen.
Right, and so, but I think that means we as documentation reviewers are responsible to be sure that the proposed hyperlink goes to something that's useful. Now, that doesn't safeguard us against future misuse, but for the short term, I think it's fine.
Thank you.
And and I can share that I went to their site and I explored around trying to find actual mentions of Jenkins and not just have this be some nebulous thing that, oh, they use open source and Jenkins is a little piece of it somewhere else. They actually have they linked to the project itself. So if we go to that, it takes us right to the repo where they're using Jenkins. They have everything set up pretty standard here. The site does also mention Jenkins in different places. So it's not just something random or something less nice, I'll put it. I did do some research and try to investigate further, but I wasn't 100% sure. So I also asked Mark, and Mark helped clarify. So now we know.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Mark. Next up, so Google Summer Code 2025 is coming up next year. Chris Starn has gone through and taken the time to update the documentation to reflect that and add project ideas and just get everything aligned or in line for 2025. So thank you very, very much, Chris, for all your work on that. Really appreciate you taking the time to get everything organized.
You're welcome. But I just wanted to add that I might need some time over the weekend to update some of the contents for some of the ideas, because we heard back some people saying maybe we should update some of the ideas, such as the one for the Jenkins dogs project.
Sure, yeah, take the time you need, Chris. No worries there. I don't think we're in any sort of rush to get that up and published. We have plenty of time for all of that. So yeah, do what you need to do. Take your time, and we'll get there when we get there.
Okay, cool.
And then, so we've also had a couple of documentation updates, specifically in the developer documentation. So thanks to Hervé and Jesse Glick for their additions to the developer docs. Various aspects of it, but things that are a result of new updates, moving to Java 17, things that we had missed previously that are now new functionalities, and just things that may not have been considered before. So stuff like interesting labels that users might find relevant, something that wasn't in the documentation before that Hervé added. The updated examples that Jesse Glick provided were for using public, which wasn't part of the documentation previously. So Again, just thank you to Jesse and Hervé for their additions there. And then on top of that, Daniel Beck submitted a pull request recently to add stbind into the documentation, the JavaScript guidelines specifically. This was a result of some of the CSP work. So just another way that the CSP project is contributing to Jenkins in various ways. And then lastly, these updates here from Basil were to the changelog and upgrade guide to include the Windows Negotiate SSO and reverse proxy authentication. Those were changes that came as a result of the Spring Security and Spring Framework and Jakarta update. These were not part of the changelog, explicitly part of the changelog and upgrade guide instructions. So thanks to Basil for taking the time to add those and make sure everything's included accordingly. And that covered the agenda that I had for us today. Is there any other topic or any other idea that anyone wants to add on or discuss before we wrap up for the day?
Oh yeah, I just want to bring up like that site is going to get dark modes pretty soon because like we just accepted we approved an PR for it, but we'll merge it sometime during the day tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate that. Good to know. All right. Mark, Bruno, anything else?
Nothing else.
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Okay, great. So then we'll wrap up for today. Before I get too far ahead, the Thanksgiving holiday is going to be coming up in the U.S. in just a couple of weeks. So I think Doc's office hours was supposed to be on that day, so we'll be skipping it that week. But we'll resume in December once that's all cleared up. So just something to be aware of. And I'm imagining, Mark, that means Doc's office hours Asia is also canceled that day. It hasn't already been.
I think it's already removed from the calendar.
Okay, perfect.
We actually won't have Doc's office hours Asia next week or the following week, right? Next week because I'm out of office. Following week because I'm also out of office. Two different reasons,
right.
though.
Right. Yep. So yeah, so we'll have Doc's office hours return back in December, and we'll see you then. Recording will be available in 24 to 48 hours and posted on community.jenkins.io. Until then, take care, stay safe, and have a great rest of your week. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey.